Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at some very fun battles in the Open Master League featuring a very spicy moveset experiment. In today's battles, I'm going to be running Zacian, one of the most popular Pokemon in the Master League, but I'm going to be running Zacian with a twist. Instead of any of the two normal fast moves, Quick Attack or Snarl, I'm going to be running Fire Fang, hopefully to surprise some Steel types along the way. I definitely don't recommend running Fire Fang, but I was able to go 8 and 7 with it. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and check out Fire Fang Zacian in action in the Open Master League. Hopping to the first match, picking up a fairly neutral lead, Dialga into Mewtwo. I will need to switch out eventually, but first I'm going to go for the Iron Head, but my opponent makes a very nice catch, catching the Iron Head onto their Exca. Bad news for the Exca, however, as it's going to be answered with my Kyogre, and Kyogre just has a dominant matchup. They're going to fire off the Drill Run, Kyogre tanks it like a champ, and gets the full farm down. I lose CMP to Mewtwo, so I'm not going to go for my Surf right away. Instead, I'm going to go for the extra Waterfall when they bring in the Mewtwo. Mewtwo is going to be firing off the Side Strike. I'm going to let this through. Side Strike barely does not KO with 1 HP remaining. Kyogre returns fire with the Surf and gets the Mewtwo low. Mewtwo banks a move for later. In the back, they have Zacian. At this point, I'm feeling really good about my chances to win this game because I am running Fire Fang. Fire Fang has a lot of fast move pressure, so all I have to do is basically wait for them to lower their defense, and then I should be in a very good spot. So I'm going to let this through. They do go for the close combat, and now it is Fire Fang time. These Fire Fangs, now that they've lowered their defense, are just shredding through the opponent's Zacian. They fire off the Play Rough. I'm able to tank that, no problem. And as you can see, my Zacian is going to be able to farm them all the way down. I will shield their move that they reach at 1 HP. They have a move on the Mewtwo, but bad news for them, I still have a shield remaining, so I can shield up the Side Strike, Fire Fang down, and that is a good game. We've got some spice on the lead in the next match, Dialga into Florges. While Florges is a staple in the Master League Premier Cup, it is very rarely seen in Open Masters, so pretty cool to see here. My opponent is of course going to outpace thanks to Fairy Wind. They fire off the Moonblast, and that does quite a bit of damage, but I can return fire with the super effective Iron Head. Iron Head does get a shield from Florges. I save switch into Zacian, hoping my opponent is going to send in a Metagross in the back if they have one, but they do not. They're staying in with Florges, firing off the Moonblast, and that deals quite a bit of damage. The unfortunate thing is that now that they've landed the big move, they can just go straight Disarming Voice. So I will commit the shield on the Disarming Voice. I'm going to throw 5 Fire Fangs and fire off the Wild Charge, winning CMP over the Florges. Now you may notice my Zacian is not running close combat. I figured since I have Fire Fang, I probably didn't need the steel coverage, and that's actually going to come in handy here because my opponent is probably not expecting Play Rough after they've seen Wild Charge. Big damage, aggressive switch into Dialga, and my opponent sends in their own. I am not going to be able to make it to the Draco Meteor, but I'm able to make it to an Iron Head. My opponent knows it's only an Iron Head. They let that through, but that's actually what I needed to have happen. Now, I can send in the Zacian, and let's let the Fire Fangs go to work. They're trying to Dragon Breath down. They're able to do so, but they took a lot of Fire Fang damage to do so. And at this point, I should be safe to shield as my opponent is only making it to one big move. They full send the Draco Meteor. Kyogre waterfalls down Dialga and the Dragonite, and that is a good game. We've got a mirror match in the next game, Dialga versus Dialga. Considering I have Kyogre in the back, I am definitely happy to catch my opponent's Dragon type on the lead. So I'm going to stay in here, farm up, fire off the Draco Meteor, and win the Coin Flip CMP tie here. I'm firing off the Draco Meteor. Opponent is going to commit the shield, so at this point, I'm not willing to shield myself. They're going to be firing off the Iron Head. And now I'm going to aggressively switch into Zacian. These Fire Fangs are chunking away at Dialga's HP. Dialga is going to make it to the Iron Head, so I will respect it with a shield. And now my opponent is going to send in a Giratina, and that is not what I was hoping to see. I desperately need to land this Play Rough. I'm firing off the Play Rough. Play Rough does get shielded, and my Dialga is just too low to get rid of the Giratina. Giratina has a massive amount of energy. I try to call a bait. It's a Shadow Ball, and unfortunately, I'm only able to make it to a Wild Charge, not a Play Rough here. And Wild Charge just does not do enough damage. I can send in Dialga, but my opponent can just go for the Ominous Wind, and things are looking extremely dire in this moment. They fire off the Ominous Wind. I'm going to send in Kyogre. They have the Shadow Ball here. I will respect it with a shield, We'll have to see what do they have in the back. They have Lugia, and unfortunately, I think this is going to be game over. I can fire off the Origin Pulse on the CMP tie to the Aeroblast, but unfortunately, Origin Pulse is not going to be enough to KO here. Lugia is just too tanky, surviving the Origin Pulse. They're going to return fire with the Aeroblast. Aeroblast KOs Kyogre, they get the boost, and that's game over. Great lead in the next match, Dialga into Palkia. Opponent safe switches into a Genesect, and this is Genesect's worst nightmare. Zacian tearing through the Genesect with Fire Fang. Genesect goes for the Techno Blast. I'm able to absorb that damage, and I leave with energy to threaten the Palkia. Opponent, they're going to wait their clock. They are going to be sending in the Palkia here, and I'm firing off the Play Rough. This will hit for massive super effective damage onto Palkia. Palkia is forced to commit the shield. These Fire Fangs doing absolutely nothing. Palkia is going to be firing off a charge move, and that 100% works for me. They go for the Aqua Tail. I can immediately send in Dialga. They have Groudon in the back, and the opponent concedes the match. Picking up a tricky lead in the next match, Dialga into Metagross. I'm going to stay in this matchup to start, trade shields, get some chip damage, and then I am going to be sending in the Zacian. Ideally, I would love to align my Kyogre on the Metagross in the endgame, but that's definitely a bit tricky considering the alignment that I have now. I shield up the Earthquake, I fire back with the Draco Meteor, they commit the shield, and now I send in Zacian. These Fire Fangs are adding up, but so are the Bullet Punches. They make it to the Meteor Mash. I will expend the final shield here, and now my opponent sends in Dialga. This is good. I had to bait out the Dragon type, so that way my Kyogre does not face it in the endgame. I fire off the Play Rough here, getting same type attack bonus. I get a shield, and they go for the Iron Head right away. Iron Head is easily going to be lethal from this range. The nice thing is, I've baited out the Dialga, they've wasted all their energy, and now I can use my own Dialga to get rid of theirs. I'm going to be firing off the Iron Head as soon as I get there. Iron Head should just about KO from this range. Firing off the Iron Head, not quite enough, but the Dragon Breaths are able to KO. In the back, they have Dragonite, and this is bad. I'm able to get a lot of Dragon Breath damage, but now I have to use Kyogre to take care of the Dragonite. Dragonite is going to be firing off a Dragon Claw. That does not do a lot of damage, but unfortunately, everything I throw here is going to be resisted. They're going for another Dragon Claw here, and now my Kyogre is extremely low. I'm firing off this Surf, needing this to KO. Surf does not KO. Waterfalls, KO the Dragonite. I'm very low HP. Back in comes the Metagross. Kyogre able to make it to the Surf with a fraction of HP. KO the Metagross and clutch an improbable win. Tough lead in the next match, Dialga into Ho-Oh. Honestly, Ho-Oh is definitely a core breaker for this team, as it does very well versus Dialga, and very well versus my Zacian since I'm running Fire Fang. I'm farming up past the Draco Meteor, and I'm going to bait with the Iron Head, hoping to try and grab a shield. Iron Head does get the shield, but I have to respect the Sacred Fire. It just hits absurdly hard. Sacred Fire is going to get the shield. They get the attack debuff as well, which is very unfortunate. They're going to be firing off another move here. I will commit the shield. It's another Sacred Fire. Thankfully, I do not get debuffed twice. I'm going to farm up, go for the Iron Head. I'm debuffed. This is resisted, but it should still be enough damage to KO. But the bad news is I have no shields. They send in their own Dialga, and I'm going to send in Fire Fang Zacian. These Fire Fangs definitely adding up onto the Dialga. Dialga is going to be going for the Iron Head. Iron Head not going to be lethal. I'm going to farm up till just before they make it to the move. Go for my Wild Charge here, but I accidentally miscount. I farm up too much. They go for the Iron Head, and I get KO'd. That is an incredibly bad mistake. Now, I'm going to be firing off this Iron Head, hoping that they let it through, which they do. In the back, they have Palkia, I have Kyogre, and I resign the match. Picking up a favorable lead in the next match, Dialga into Dragonite. Dragonite staying in this matchup. It looks like they're going to go for an early shield advantage by firing off a superpower and then switching out of this lead. I will commit the shield. Opponent full sends the superpower. They save switch into Excadrill, and I'm going to send in Fire Fang Zacian. I could have sent in Kyogre, but I'm a little curious, how does Fire Fang Zacian do in this matchup? Fire Fangs are tearing through the Exca, but the bad news is due to the slow energy generation, they're already at a second move and drill run gets me deep into the red. Zacian with 1 HP remaining, able to get the farm down. I leave with the play rough loaded here, gonna throw it into the Dragonite, but unfortunately the 1 Dragon Breath sneak is able to KO. My opponent will make it to a last second Dragon Claw. I do live this, so I'm gonna let this go. And at this point, I'm expecting it's Metagross in the back, and it is. I'm down a shield, but I still feel very confident in this scenario because Kyogre has an incredibly dominant matchup here. I fire off the Surf, and it ends up being a CMP tie. Surf is gonna grab the first of their 2 shields. I have to shield something at some point, so I'm gonna shield the first. Unfortunately, I do get baited with a Meteor Mash. That's not great. The good news is I'm still not in Earthquake range here, so I should tank whatever they throw. My opponent goes for a Meteor Mash here. My guess is they're just trying to stall clock and save energy to potentially have energy to throw at my Dialga in the endgame, but unfortunately that plan does not work out. They're forced to fire off the move that they saved onto Kyogre, and my Dialga can win the game at this point. I just have too much energy. Firing off the Iron Head, this will be taking care of the Metagross, and the Dragonite dies to a Dragon Breath. We see a familiar lead in the next match, Dialga into Ho-Oh. I lost to the last Ho-Oh lead, so I'm looking for a bit of redemption. This time, instead of staying in, I'm going to save switch into the Fire Fang Zacian. But with Fire Fang, this matchup is just so rough for Zacian. My opponent goes for a Brave Bird early on, and that's actually something that helps me quite a bit, as now any one move is going to KO here, so they're forced to shield my wild charges, whereas typically if they don't debuff their defense, 1 wild charge is not enough to KO. I will be double shielding in this matchup. I just need to try and get rid of this Ho-Oh if at all possible. I'm firing off another wild charge here. Are they willing to give up the final shield? Yes, they are. I am now very debuffed, looking to make it to another wild charge. My opponent not going to let that happen. They're going to fire off a move. They go for the Brave Bird, and I'm going to get KO'd. They're very debuffed. I send in Dialga. Opponent is going to pivot into Golden Go. I'm going to farm up, counting the hexes to 7, and we catch the Focus Blast onto Kyogre. Let's go. Kyogre does take a lot of damage there, but able to absorb it a lot better than the Dialga would. Golden Go already at another move. They're going to fire off the Shadow Ball, and Shadow Ball is going to be lethal. And now I'm going to farm up as much as I dare with my Dialga, go for the Iron Head, and Iron Head is going to KO here. So down goes Golden Go. In the back, my opponent has Dialga. I'm going to overfarm as much as I dare, and I'm going to be firing off the Draco Meteor here. Draco Meteor is going to KO. It's going to be a race. Dialga versus Ho-Oh. Dialga wins CMP. I overfarmed just enough. Iron Head KOs the Ho-Oh, and we clutch an improbable win. Same leads again in the next match, Dialga into Ho-Oh. I was able to defeat a Ho-Oh lead last time by save switching into Zacian, so that's what I'm going to try this time. I save switch into Zacian, my opponent is farming up, and they're going to be firing off a charge move. I will commit the shield, it's the Sacred Fire, and I do get debuffed. That is quite unfortunate. I'm going to be firing off the Wild Charge here. Wild Charge is going to land, and as you can see, my opponent did not lower their defense, so my Wild Charge not going to be enough to KO, and here I'm just going to let, unfortunately, the Zacian go. I send in Dialga, my opponent is going to send in their own Zacian. I'm farming up here, looking to switch, but my switch timer just wasn't up, so instead I go for the Iron Head. Iron Head able to land, I switch into Kyogre, and I get the Waterfall through as they throw their charge move. They go for the close combat, they live the Waterfall, and they make it to close combat number 2. Close combat is going to get me low. We'll have to see what they have in the back. It's their own Dialga, and I resign the match. Hopping to the final match, leading Dialga into another Dragonite. As with before, they're going to reach a charge move before me, and I'm more than willing to shield here. My opponent is going to fire off the Dragon Claw. They save switch into Excadrill, and it looks like this is the exact team that I played earlier, so odds are there's going to be a Metagross in the back. Before, I was just able to Fire Fang down, leave on 1 HP, and left with a Play Rough loaded, so let's see if that works this time as well. They're going to fire off another Drill Run here. I'm able to tank it, farming down. This time, it's a simultaneous KO. This is bad. It all comes down to a guessing game. I think they're sending in Metagross, so I bring in Kyogre. guessing correctly is going to enable me to win this game. The thing I do have to watch for is my opponent potentially catching a Surf onto Dragonite. That could be a play that could potentially give them a win con. They're firing off a charge move here. Earthquake would not be lethal, so I let this through. Earthquake is going to land. In comes the Dragonite, and I'm going to send in Dialga. Dialga firing off the Iron Head here into the Dragonite. This, of course, will be lethal, so they're forced to burn a shield. And from here, honestly, I don't have to shield the Dialga. My Kyogre wins this game. I can just bring back in Kyogre. I leave with the Surf loaded. End up throwing on alignment there. Honestly, should have just thrown one more Waterfall to be safe. But, as you can see, with very little HP, I'm able to get the win. And now some final thoughts on the Fire Fang Zacian experiment. While Fire Fang was definitely able to catch some opponents off guard, especially that poor Genesect, I can definitely see why Quick Attack and Snarl are the recommended fast moves, purely just based off of energy generation. The meta in the Master League is typically a pretty bulky one, which makes sense considering all these Pokemon are at level 50, and running a fast move Pressure Mon like Fire Fang that doesn't get same type attack bonus, unfortunately, in neutral or resisted situations, it unfortunately renders Zacian a lot less potent than it would be if you were running Quick Attack or if you were running Snarl. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is absolutely incredible. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.